I always like to visit Baldur's Gate 3 when we talk about Black Myth Wukong and when we talk about PlayStation. It's a very interesting set of circumstances because that is one game whose technical challenges prevented it from launching on the Xbox platform at the same time as the PlayStation platform. Another thing too is there were limitations from the developers. The developer himself, who was in charge, said, "We tried to do same ship, but it almost became sink ship." That was the comment from Baldur's Gate's boss when he was on the FPS podcast with SkillUp's cohorts, Jake Baldino and another young lady. So you're gonna have to go find that episode to be able to watch that interview. I also remember that around that same time, MBG had in a very interesting way, tried to claim Baldur's Gate 3 as a PlayStation 5 console exclusive, even with Sony having nothing to do with it, but was very quickly corrected by Cornwhelp, a very AFK user, who said it's not a PS5 console exclusive, mate, a tweet that has now been deleted. And AFK, very AFK, is the director of publishing at Larian Studios and pretty much is still working there. So when we look at the circumstances, I go back and say, okay, when the game came out, I remember that this particular gentleman here threw a shout out to the Xbox gamers after the game launched on Xbox and said, "Shout out to the Xbox community for showing up for Baldur's Gate 3 as one of the top purchased game on their platform." And he was just, basically expressing thanks and so on and so forth. But in reality, though, when we actually go ahead and think about this whole conversation, Black Myth Wukong's highest, Black Myth Wukong, sorry, Baldur's Gate 3's highest sales are on PC. There's no doubt about that. And it also brings a conversation to light where, it is pretty much a thing where most gamers aren't buying video games. They are literally beholden to Fortnite, the final boss of this video game industry. He pretty much talked about how the hardcore gamers, those who would talk about games, who will flex about how much they buy games and so on and so forth, are for the most part a very small, unique percentage of the gaming population. It brings us again to the whole shtick where even though PlayStation is selling and moving hundreds and hundreds of units of PlayStation daily, if not even thousands, I mean, for crying out loud, last year alone, they sold 20 million consoles. Or let me put it this way, they shipped 20 million consoles, right? At the end of the day, it doesn't seem like it's making the dent that anybody would think it's making. Here's this post on Thread here. Someone said, "Great interview with Matt Piscatella, and kind of funny. He broke down how most gamers don't buy games. Casuals are the majority, but only buy a couple of games a year. US hardcore gamers are the minority. Also, Game Pass is owning in MAU, and Fortnite has the industry in a chokehold." This has also led me to, in a sense, want to continue to press on the matter that the so-called paradigm of PlayStation's exclusivity from a third-party perspective that many championed years ago, and even some kept championing even through months ago because of companies like Square Enix coming out and saying, our sales were below our expectations. Our profits were below our expectations. And I remember some people came to the defense squad saying, well, Square Enix's standards and Square Enix's expectations are too high. Do y'all remember that? I do. I remember people saying that Square Enix's expectations were too high. And so when Square Enix was saying that they wanted to bring their games, to Xbox in terms of Final Fantasy 16, or they were expressing interest and all of the above, I said to myself, perhaps something must be going on, and in this particular regard, why are they now switching gears? Why are they now turning aside from an exclusivity paradigm and concept that they set up? Apparently, this was what was going on in the shadows, whereby nobody was buying these games. They'd make these games with hundreds of millions of dollars. They'll make them over years, and then they come out. And instead of you to get at least, 10 million units sold so that you can basically champion and say, let's go in for the next game, you find out that everybody was playing Fortnite while your game launched. And not only that, there were bundles with the Final Fantasy game as well. So when Square Enix was taking, a turn, they didn't want to go ahead and say this, but Matt Piscatella was not shy from the issue. he basically went ahead to express the reality that basically had been plaguing the gaming industry. And it's one that now people are coming to acknowledge. It's simmering in. You know what I mean? Because it was all said that, oh, Xbox players don't buy games, so why would developers even bother porting their games to Xbox? Do y'all remember that nonsense statement? Well, apparently, I started to talk about this and say PlayStation players don't buy games. I remember when I made the video. Sarbravian made this video after he had started coming up, with his own analyses on the PlayStation market. But I made a video where I pointed out that God of War Ragnarok selling 15 million units while having access to 100 and something million units PS4, and at that time about 40 to ish million units of PS5s. I said that was a travesty. A lot of Defense Force PlayStation fans came out and said, oh, well, it sold 15 million units, so that must be a good thing. And I said, guys, you don't understand what's going on here. Every other game is coming to eat y'all's lunch on your own platform. That's what's going on. And then Sarbravian took even a step further and lambasted his own fan base, which is the PlayStation fan base, and showed the different percentages bit by bit for Astrobot, Spider-Man, Horizon Zero Dawn, Returnal, Ratchet and Clank, and seeing how these game sales were just abysmal in comparison to the access of games, or I guess access in terms of consoles that people had to them. So these console buyers were basically third-party machines.
30% of people that play video games will not buy a video game this year. Wow. So that's a third of the audience that just won't buy. A further 18% purchase a new game every 6 months or less frequently. So these are your folks that are buying Madden or EAFC, or they're picking up Call of Duty, right? Your big mass market only kind of buyer.
18%. That's 48% vaporized. That's almost half the gaming industry. Sorry, that's almost half of the buyers in that sample size or in that cohort. Just gone. Just gone. Because, again, like he said, 30%, they're not going to buy a thing. 18% are mass market buyers. FIFA, remember that number, right? Do you all remember that number? Where I was saying this. 1 million PlayStation players only play Call of Duty 100% of their time. This statistic leaked in 2000 and I can't remember, in 2021. Over 1 million players only played Call of Duty on their PlayStation and nothing else. I said to many of you that this 1 million user base is a possibility for Xbox to poach. Some of you said, no, why would they go do that? I'm like, huh? Are you blind? The moment the next generation is rolling around and all they play is Call of Duty, and they realize that they have access to Call of Duty, that they have access to Call of Duty in different options, different possibilities, guys, it's a no-brainer that many of them would at least consider or think about it, unless you're calling them drones and they have no agency of their own. Oh, look, it's a VG video on the issue. It's another VG video on the issue. They do that. They'll recommend your own stuff to you. This says it right here. GamesRadar. In 2021, more than 1 million players played only Call of Duty on their own account. Let's keep listening to what Matt Piscatella says.
The kind of purchaser that's watching this show, you're probably buying at least one game a month, maybe more. Only 12% of video game players buy a game once a month. Only 4% buy games more often than once per month. So, when we're talking about the developers and the publishers that are really being, hurt the most, that we're talking the most about, are the games that are really targeting this, like 16% of total players that are, purchasing very frequently, while the mass majority of players are buying a game or two a year and they're playing Fortnite, Minecraft, and Roblox. And I think that's like the biggest challenge, the biggest competitor to...
See, if this point does not stand out to you and you don't form the basis of how you perceive the current gaming industry from now henceforth, you're going to be wrong at every single turn. Fortnite is one of a plethora of phenomena that has been hitting the gaming industry for the last few years. I don't know how else I can overstate it.
Roblox. And I think that's like the biggest challenge. The biggest competitor to any new video game is Fortnite. I will die on that hill no matter what it is, because you have to fight Fortnite before you fight anything else to get your game seen and purchased. And that's like the biggest challenge I think happening right now.
I don't know how else to put it for, our general gaming audience. Sure, hold on to 75 million units sold on PlayStation 5. Because here's the thing, and this is more like a checkmate. And many PlayStation fans, you've argued yourselves into this particular checkmate. And it's this is on you, because you took these hard stances. And I've seen people say, well, the time spent on these other games, are they equating to to spending and revenue? But then at the same time, some of these folk will still come out and say, well, that's why PlayStation selling more units is actually beneficial, because they now depend on the third-party games and the spending from microtransactions from the players. How can you eat your cake and have it? How can you eat your cake and have it? So it's either you agree that not only are these games sucking attention, but they're also sucking funds that would rather have gone to single-player games or these exclusives, or you disagree and say that, oh, well, they're not sucking funds, and so PlayStation must be hemorrhaging on both sides. It's just a weird conundrum that people have put themselves in when they make these arguments. But I digress. Talk to me in the comment section. Thanks for watching the video. Peace out.